Let's go back to our focus on education and the coronavirus pandemic, because more than 60% of teachers could not finish the 2020 school curriculum due to the pandemic. This is but one of the worrying findings from a survey by the South African Teachers Union. It says more than 40,000 teachers took part in the survey. Let's discuss this then with Huw Davies from the South African Union. Huw, a very good afternoon to you. Grateful for your time as always. Was it all down to a loss of teaching time in the classroom?
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be with you. There was an enormous loss of teaching time in the classroom in 2020. My comments for the moment are focused on last year, and I think that it would probably be fairly correct to say that most of the backlogs that are built up are the result of the teaching time that was lost in 2020. If you look at the international situation for 2020, what you would find would be a very similar picture to our own here in South Africa, which is that a very, very great deal of teaching time was lost. And what that meant for us in South Africa was that it was virtually impossible for classroom practitioners, ordinary teachers, to come anywhere close to completing the curriculum that was prescribed for the given classes during last year.
What then are the consequences for the children?
Well, I think that the big problem is, we all know, I think, that a lot of what one learns is strengthened by practice. In other words, there are certain functions that you've just got to perform over and over again to get them right. If one were to look at pupils at various age levels and various stages, I'd like to use as an example a pupil who's in grade 1. In grade 1, pupils are more or less for the first time exposed to the mechanics of how to write, how to produce letters. They also learn how to turn those letters into sounds to enable them to read. Now, the practice that you need, not only to form letters, but to turn them into sounds and then to turn them into words that can be read is really, really quite extensive. And the grade 1 pupils of last year had pretty well the first term during which this could be done. After that, they lost out in toto for the best part of 4 to 5 months, which meant that for a very large number of pupils in that grade, the necessary practice simply did not take place. And one can go on. I've used grade 1 as an example, but we could go to any of the grades, and what we would find would be that there would be deficits in terms of skills practice, deficits in terms of skills knowledge, but something that has emerged from research other than our own is that pupils socially have been very detrimentally affected by the fact that they were not able to go to school, to be there, and so on. And I think one can understand this. They'd barely begun the year when all of a sudden they were out of school. The senior pupils, the matrics and so on, they returned to school in August, September, and for them a whole lot of what was normally something that they were used to simply didn't happen. So the year-end run-up didn't take place at all for them. And I think there's a fair amount of substantive research that this wasn't good for the kids.
The pandemic's key indicator has been in the disruption, not only in our lives as adults, but as you say, of children. Today we got the announcement of yet another decision to suspend contact sport as a result of coronavirus infections in schools. How much does that disruption contribute to the greater issues that children are facing at the moment in the learning that they need to do? Does this also disturb their development?
Well, I think that there's a fair amount of consensus that that is in fact the case. Children have to move around, they have to be active, they have to have exercise and so on. And the sport programs at school are frequently there to encourage the pupils to socialization, to be physically active and to do various things which are to their advantage. And we tend sometimes, in looking at school sport, we tend to concentrate on things like the competitive, possibly contact sports. But there's a great deal more to it than that. And the announcement that was made this morning to the effect that most of the sport programs as such are being suspended, this does have an effect on the pupils, not only on those who greatly enjoy, obviously, doing what they do, but it does bring about a great degree of uncertainty. One of the things that a child's environment needs is some sort of certainty about what the future holds. And a stop-start thing is not good for them psychologically. It's not good for them physically.
And very quickly, Huw, because we're out of time, in fact, but I want to ask you this. Are you seeing that children across the different phases of education are actually battling to grasp information during lessons now that many have gone back?
Yes, absolutely so. The CAPS curriculum, as it was to have been delivered last year, as you know, has been amended by means of the annual teaching plan, which are the shortened curriculum. And even so, pupils returning to school, there has to be a lot of what we call building back. That is to say, picking up issues from the previous year of instruction to enable them to understand what's happening in the year they're now in. So there's no doubt about it that those deficits have not been good for the children, and it's taking a lot of work and time and effort on their part, on the part of teachers and of parents, to try and get the children up to speed once again.
Huw Davies, good to speak to you. Huw is with the South African Teachers Union about a study that's now found, well, at least part of the extent of disruption caused between pupils and teachers. That's as far as the curriculum and what they managed to cover in the first year of the coronavirus pandemic. You're watching the Midday View on eNCA.